Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your next mini lesson Cornell Notes assignment. Today we're going to be discussing Shakespearean drama for our English 12 class. We're preparing to begin to read Macbeth from your textbook, and reading Shakespeare without a daily connection, especially if it's your first exposure to Shakespeare, can be a little bit of a difficult experience. There's resources out there to help you out as you begin to read. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. It's going to be a great unit, but it's going to take a little bit of work too. So be sure to take great Cornell notes for me, please. If you have questions, reach out to your instructor, and we're happy to help you through this process as well. So, although Shakespeare's contributions to poetry were great, he left an even clearer mark on drama, and we've seen that with some of the sonnets that we've read in the last week. Drama for Shakespeare came of age during the Elizabethan period. Elizabethan drama emerged from three sources: medieval plays, 16th century interludes, and Latin and Greek classics. You see, the mystery, miracle, and morality plays of medieval times they were plays performed in churches, inns, and marketplaces as a way of spreading religious knowledge. They provided the opportunity for actors and writers to develop their craft within biblical story outlines already familiar to the audience. They knew the story and they understood what was going on. In the 16th century, however, another form of drama arose. Certain noble families of the time maintained that their own companies of actors, who when they weren't doubling as household servants, workers, helpers for the family, they amused their patrons with brief, farcical interludes that ridiculed the manner and customs of commoners. So they were meant to poke fun at those less fortunate of themselves. These interludes had little to do with the Bible, paving the way for later Elizabethan dramatists to write plays with secular themes that didn't have to be of a religious nature. The third source, Latin and Greek dramas that were revived during the Renaissance and studied at university centers such as Oxford and Cambridge, modeled for Elizabethan playwrights the characteristics of comedy and tragedy, two pieces that are essential to Shakespeare's success as a playwright. Renaissance dramatists borrowed devices from these earlier works but inserted their own elements consistent with the thinking of the age. As products of the Renaissance mindset, dramas dealt with the complexities of human life on Earth rather than the religious themes of earlier times. Plays were often staged at court, in the homes of wealthy nobles, and in inn-yards where spectators could sit on the ground in front of the stage or in balconies overlooking it. A similar plan was used in England's first theatre, such as the famous Globe Theatre in London. Those people sitting on the ground, that's where we get the term groundlings. By 1600, London had more playhouses than any other European capital. The Globe was the most successful thanks to an actor, poet, and playwright, William Shakespeare. Tremendously versatile and prolific, Shakespeare contributed 37 plays to the theater's repertory, including tragedies, such as Othello, comedies, such as A Midsummer Night's Dream, and histories about the kings of England. Shakespeare's clever wordplay, memorable characters, and complex plot appealed to everyone in his audience, from the uneducated groundlings who paid a penny to stand and watch, to the royal family who received special private performances. Being an actor himself, Shakespeare knew well the capabilities and limitations of the theater building and of the acting company for whom he wrote his plays. It wasn't easy putting on a crowd-pleasing performance in Elizabethan times. Besides having to memorize their lines, actors had to be able to sing and to dance, to wrestle and fence, clown, and weep. Because the stage had no front curtain, the actors always walked on and off the stage in full view of the audience. Plays had to be written so that any character who died on stage could be unobtrusively hauled off in some way. In retrospect, Shakespeare dominates the theater of the late 16th and early 17th centuries. In fact, his plays represent the height of the English dramatist tradition. At the time, however, others were equally admired. Christopher Marlowe was the first playwright to exploit the potential of the English language as a dramatic medium. His tragedies show the kind of psychological probing that is a hallmark of the finest Elizabethan and 17th century dramas. Also popular were the comedies of a rugged, boisterous poet and playwright named Ben Jonson. His plays provided a satiric, somewhat cynical commentary on the lives of ordinary Londoners. Jonson's masks especially attracted aristocratic audiences who flocked to the spectacular pageants with their elaborate scenery, costumes, music, and dance. By the time of Elizabeth's death in 1603, the influence of the Puritans had begun to grow in England. Puritans who believed that the Elizabethan drama and the rowdy crowds they attracted were highly immoral worked to close all the theaters. They were not immediately successful, but later on they did show some power in the control of what was being produced. Shakespeare wrote some of his greatest tragedies, including Macbeth, which we'll be reading, during the reign of Elizabeth's successor, James I. Shakespeare's interest in issues of power may have been sparked by the intense conflicts between the king and Parliament. When the Puritans overthrew James' son Charles in 1649, however, they finally closed all the playhouses. This act brought the final curtain down on the golden age of drama. So, just a very brief summary about what's going on during this time for you, a little historical context for you. We'll get into those extra pieces as we begin our reading over the next couple of weeks as well. So please make sure you have your Cornell notes set and ready to go. A little bit shorter this week, and if you have any questions, be sure to reach out. We'll see you next time.